duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Okay, I think we have a citizen who wants to speak.
Madam Chair, can I make that motion? What I'd like to do is make a motion that we add citizens' comments to the agenda, since we have a citizen or two that wants to speak to us today. And normally in special meetings, we don't have citizens' comments, but I'd like for us to add that. So I'll make that in the form of a motion.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Our first citizen.
Just me?
Mhm.
Hello, and thank you for letting me speak. My name is Mick Smith. I think a lot of you know me. I live 2023rd Avenue, and I'm really thankful you're having this special meeting about the bridge, because since I've lived here since '94, it's been a head scratcher to me why there's only one lane on and off, when to me it's a no-brainer. There's one lane on, 2 lanes off. Get rid of the 2 pedestrian lanes, only have 1. And that just to me just makes all the sense in the world, because we all know who lives on the island, people who live in Mount Pleasant, never do people come onto the island at the same time. But we all know there's a lot of times they all leave the island at the same time. Anybody who's been here on a Saturday in the summer during a rainstorm, anybody who's been here for the 4th of July fireworks show, anybody who's been here for a turnaround day on Saturdays with the housing rentals, they all know it's a mess getting off the island. To me, it's also a safety issue, because the side streets become a real problem with cars flying up and down 23rd Avenue, 24th Avenue, all those numbered streets. They fly up and down the street thinking they can get off the island faster by going to Waterway. I have a couple of friends I know personally whose dogs and cats have been killed. Cars going up and down. I clocked one time, 50 miles per hour going down by my house, trying to get to Waterway. So it's crazy. And so I know some people are going to say that we need the emergency lane. And I challenge everybody to look at a lot of the other bridges in the Low Country. There are not emergency lanes on all the bridges. The number one being the Ravenel Bridge, and it still seems to work. I'm not a structural road design kind of engineer guy, but I think that bridge is wide enough for 1 pedestrian lane, bike and pedestrian lane. I'm a biker. I still want that lane. I think it's very important. But if we have 1 lane on, 2 lanes off, 1 pedestrian lane, if there is an emergency where somebody has to get on the island quickly, a fire truck, police car, ambulance, there's still room for people to move over, get that car on or off the bridge quickly. So I got some other notes. Oh yeah, this one. It's a win for all. And we all know we need to make maybe other people around our surrounding communities happy with us and not mad at us. I don't think there's anybody in Mount Pleasant who's going to be upset that they don't get stuck in Saturday traffic as bad when they need to leave and go home. So I know it's not a panacea. There's still going to be traffic, but to me, this is the biggest thing we can do is 1 lane on, 2 lanes off. If you want to talk about a reversible lane, that's fine. I don't think that would work as well. I think I've had a conversation with the chief about it. There's some kind of issues with how you do that. It's expensive. But that's what I really wanted to talk to you about, is just that. To me, that's a no-brainer. Since 1994, I've never understood why the bridge is the way it is. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
We're going to be discussing that today. So good comment. Anyone else? Any other comments? Okay, let's start this meeting. The purpose of the meeting today is to update the Public Safety Committee on the status of discussions between the Isle of Palms and South Carolina DOT regarding the agreed Isle of Palms connector study. We'd like to discuss possible scopes of work, if we have time, the expected outcome of the meeting for the committee, and to agree on the scope of work for the connector study. I'd like to start by talking about what goals the 3 of us expect. What would we like to see from this study? Rusty, you want to start with you?
Well, yeah, I'm interested in seeing the update on the study for sure. We got the deck just a couple of days ago, so I'm assuming we're going to walk through what we have here already, right? The attachments that we had.
Yeah, we'll go through all of that. But the first thing is, if we're going to do a study on the connector, because of issues that have been raised? And what are the issues that are most important to you out there that you think we need to address?
Well, I think Mick did a good job of addressing most of those too. I think getting people off this island in an efficient way is probably a very high priority, because I've seen it firsthand myself many times, what happens on those avenues. Even though I don't live on one of the avenues, I live adjacent to many of them, of course. And if we have a rainstorm or some sort of event like that, it gets even exacerbated. But even on just a regular weekend afternoon during the summer, you're going to have that max exodus that backs things up all the way past the church up there, and on up Palm Boulevard. So I'd like to see the ingress egress addressed. I also agree in regards to, I think it's been overdone in regards to pedestrian / bike path. There's, in my mind, no reason there should be one on each side. I mean, I think if we had it on one side, that would be plenty. And I'm like most residents here, I did not at all like the manner that this connector was addressed when it was just thrown on us, that it was going to be restriped, and we had no recourse to go back and provide any kind of input at all. So that still sort of sticks in my craw as a resident here. So those are the big things for me.
Well, I think we've got a restart that we can do now. So we'll be talking about that today more. Blair?
We got two different issues here. One is a traffic study and a long-term thing. I'm not particularly interested in that today. My interest is in what I thought this meeting was about, and that is us hiring an expert. And I'm not prepared to talk about that except in executive session, because it deals with negotiation and potential litigation with SEDOT and strategies as it expands from that. That's what I think needs to be done now and is most important. A study is a long-term thing that will take a very long time to do. That's not where I am, and that's not what I'm interested in doing today. I agree with what Rusty said. I agree with you that there are different things that need to be done, but that's not the issue that I thought was before us today.
Okay. Why would you want to have negotiations?
I can't talk about all that except in executive session.
All right. Well, then I will give my opinion as to what I think this study is about. The first is, when the connector was restriped, that there was not sufficient input from the community. And what happened was that a center lane that appeared to traffic engineers as being not used was taken away. And that center lane was used for emergency vehicles to get on and off the island quickly during high traffic congestion times. So I think our first priority is to look at emergency access and egress. And then in addition to that, make sure we've got a hurricane evacuation plan, which was never addressed at all in this one, because I can't imagine us not having a hurricane evacuation plan on this island. The second part is, I believe the root cause of that problem is traffic congestion. And addressing that problem is the second part, and would be a longer phase study when we look at maybe the whole corridor of the Isle of Palms connector to see how we can more efficiently get traffic on and off the island. So traffic congestion, emergency access and egress, and hurricane evacuation are the three goals that I have set for this. Okay. I think at this point, what we'd like to do is have an update on what has happened so far, because a lot of it was before we were on council. And Desiree, can you bring us up to date as to where we are, what's been done in terms of negotiations with South Carolina DOT, and what you've been working on, which I think is really good.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you all remember last year when the city was notified about the changes that SCDOT was had already decided to do on the connector. They came to the meeting, to the public safety meeting, and made a presentation. The city conveyed, disappointment in not having been included as part of the of those discussions, and the ultimate plan that was implemented in early 2021. After that, as you all know, the Secretary of Transportation sent a letter to Senator Campson agreeing to conduct a study to look at the modifications that had been done in the connector, evaluate what other alternatives might be available for the connector that not only provided accommodations for pedestrians and cyclists, but also address the concerns that the community had raised with the emergency access and the center lane. At the time, that was during the summer. Since then, we have received the scope that was shared with the committee, the scope that was being proposed by SCDOT. And we went back to the secretary earlier this year in a conversation I had with her and Mayor Pounds to ask that scope be expanded to include not only the connector specifically, but also a full corridor study that looks at the intersections all the way down to 17th and also the intersection here at the end of the connector and Palm Boulevard. Again, the purpose was to looking at what you just mentioned, the root cause of the traffic issues and looking at what other alternatives might be, again, not only for the connector, but to looking at the full corridor. And the secretary agreed to expand the scope of that project on 2 phases. Phase 1 would be the original purpose of the study, which is, what's on top of mind on the connector and the changes that were done. But also adding a phase 2, which would look at signal times and intersections, Hungry Neck, also Rifle Range, and all the way to 17th. And looking at options just like, reversible lanes. I think it was mentioned by the citizens' comments, looking at adding lanes, whether an option would be to include a standalone pedestrian bridge next to the connector so you can completely segregate pedestrian traffic from the existing connector, looking at roundabouts in different locations and all that. So the last conversation we had with them was requesting that scope be expanded to look at all those issues that will continue to grow and make traffic issues, congestion, really a daytime reality. And that was agreed by the secretary. I have not yet received the final scope that's going to be provided to the company that they're going to hire to do the study. When we talked about timeline, because it's been a while since that commitment was done by DOT to conduct the study. Her response was that she would like to have this done in the next 6 months. The data collection and the alternatives in the report. So at the end of, the next step will be, we've hired Bill Engineering to assist the city in throughout this process and attend these meetings with the city to help us get an understanding from with her expertise and the team's expertise. And the next meeting will be the scheduling of a kickoff meeting with all the stakeholders involved to identify again what kind of data we want to make sure it's looked at. So this meeting certainly will be helpful in communicating what the expectations are from this committee based on the new information that the study will be expanded to include a lot of the issues that have been addressed. But that meeting has not yet been scheduled. And we, again, don't have yet the final scope that was agreed to, which would be a second phase.
Madam Chair, if I could ask a question or
Yes.
two. Now, when was this meeting, Desiree? The initial meeting that you had with Mayor Pounds and the
That was
secretary?
last month
Last
in
month.
January. Yes.
And there was an expectation from the secretary at that point that they had sort of a 6-month timeline to come back with their proposals?
From the time that the scope was finalized, agreed upon by all parties, and the study would start.
And we don't have a meeting set with all the stakeholders, and I'm assuming the stakeholders are what, Mount Pleasant?
It would
Sullivan's
be-
Island, Isle of Palms?
It would be correct. It would be us, our representatives, and neighboring communities, I would suspect.
So to to summarize, it would be a 2-phase study. And once we have a scope approved, accepted by us and approved by South Carolina DOT, then both phases of the study could be completed within 6 months.
I don't think that the second phase would be completed in 6
Okay,
months.
so it's just phase 1 for sure. Phase 2 would have a longer timeline. Yeah, there are issues. It's a little bit more complicated, so it might take longer. Okay. Excuse me. So I think in your packet, you have a phase 1 scope, which was presented. And before that, I think I'd like to introduce Jennifer Beal. And when was Jennifer retained?
Earlier this year.
Okay. So to introduce her, can you give us a summary of your credentials and
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. So my name is Jennifer Beal. I'm a traffic engineer. I own Beal Engineering, which is located in downtown Charleston. And I have my bachelor's and master's in civil engineering, with my master's degree was focused in transportation engineering back, 20 plus years ago. You just got civil and you got your focus areas. So I've been doing this for quite a while across the Southeast. I am a professional engineer in 7 states, a professional traffic operations engineer, and a roadway safety professional, level 2 infrastructure, and also have a certification in IMSA, which is traffic signals, for level 2 field, which allows us to be able to go into the traffic signal cabinets in South Carolina. And so I do everything from traffic impact studies to corridor studies to traffic signal timings, access, safety, basically all the aspects of traffic engineering that we do every day and that we see every day. As I said, our practice is we do national projects, but primarily focused on the Southeast, particularly South Carolina and the Low Country. Let's see what else. I've served on a couple planning commissions. I've taught at the Citadel. I'm on a couple international committees for IT, transportation, and health. I've been the president of the local South Carolina chapter of the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is our organization for transportation, and then also have been the president of the district, which includes basically the Southeast minus Florida. So from Louisiana up to Virginia, Tennessee, and then kind of down in all those states except for Florida. And so I have a lot of experience in doing just this. We have quite a few on-calls where we help municipalities on a daily basis, either as an extension of staff, just as we are basically the extension of staff and being their traffic engineer, as well as being as a group of engineers that kind of help out the cities where we've been pre-qualified. Even they have 2, 3, 4 traffic engineers that help them with all their traffic aspects that come across the counties or the cities. And so we have a lot of experience in this forum doing this, working with the DOT, working with the city side of it as well, and stakeholders and public involvement and all that kind of stuff. So I'm happy to answer any questions. That was really fast. So I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all may have.
Okay, one thing I know that came up when we were looking for a consultant was conflict of interest with South Carolina DOT. Can you address that?
So we do have projects that we work directly with the DOT on. Typically, we're a subconsultant. We are a disadvantaged business. It's my company, so we're a woman-owned business. So we do have private sector work, public sector work. We commonly work on both sides, and our goal is an objective transportation solutions. And so we do that every day, working with public, private, municipal, county.
Okay, so you don't see any conflict with this study that we're doing?
No, but what I see my role as is to help guide and provide feedback to the consultant that the DOT has hired to help accomplish the goals that have been outlined, and, you know, coming up with a transportation solution that both the DOT and the city are comfortable with. And that's kind of what I see my role as in this project, is kind of help be that conduit between, and then also provide the technical feedback that y'all don't have in staff level, to be able to say, okay, this makes sense, or, like we need to push back a little bit and get a little bit more information from them, but kind of work that collaborative approach to trying to get something that we can move forward with and everybody is, satisfied with.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, and Jennifer is a resource that we can use today as well as we're going through the scope. When we start with the discussion of the phase 1 scope, which I think is, Blair, what you have been talking of, phase 1, where we are now. I'm not sure exactly how to proceed.
What you're talking about has nothing to do with what I asked for this meeting to be. Nothing. You have gone off on a completely different tangent. That's fine. What you're talking about is good and needs to be done, but has nothing to do with the reason that I asked for this meeting to be set up. That's why we need to have an executive council or executive session so that we can openly discuss what needs to be done and why. If you want to do this first, do it. But that has nothing to do with the reason that this was set up. Nothing. I specifically asked for a specific meeting.
I make
to
a motion, we
address
go into executive session at this point.
I second.
We have a vote.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.